This is Jon Fisch, and you're listening to In the Tank. I've often said that Greg Giraldo was one of the voices of our generation, and in my opinion, a comedic genius. Greg died on September 29th, 2010. This week, we'd like to pay tribute to him. In the book American Scream, the Bill Hicks story, it was clear that Bill's commentary on future events would be sorely missed. We would wonder, what would Bill say about this? Well, that's how I feel about Greg. He had a way of commenting on our society and our culture that was brilliant and hilarious. I will always wonder, what would Greg say about this? If you listen to Mark Maron's WTF podcast, I think he called it a non-episode. It was when he was remembering Greg and Robert Schimmel. He played a phone conversation that he had with Greg, and in reference to meeting up with friends last minute in LA, Greg sort of casts off his existence when he says, as an aside, kind of sarcastically, like my presence is so important to people's lives. Well, I think it's clear from the outpouring of support and sorrow since his death that Greg's existence was extremely important to many, many people. We set up at the Olive Tree Cafe above the Comedy Cellar and asked people from the comedy community to share a few words, a story, a favorite bit of Greg's. We did the same at Comics Comedy Club, and then Jesse Joyce and Ted Alexandro came over to my apartment in Astoria. So thank you to all of the comics and comedy community that spoke and shared. And these are their words.
I'm Ryan Hamilton, and sure, I'm happy to share for the brief time that I was around Greg. He was very welcoming and very warm to me, and I was very impressed by it. I got to know him a little bit on Last Comic when he was a judge, and this season, obviously. Did you guys know he was a judge on Last Comic?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you know that? I don't know if you were aware, but he was.
What we didn't know was that you were on.
Oh, right.
No,
I just wanted
kidding.
to slip that in. Yeah. So I got to know him a little bit, and he was very friendly there always. And then back in New York, my first time here at the Cellar, I came in and I didn't really, my first time working here at the Cellar, I should say, I didn't really know a lot of people. And Keith Robinson shook my hand outside, and then I came in and I sat down at the comics table, and Greg said, "Sit down, Ryan." He said right away, "Sit down." I think he'd seen me on the list or something, maybe.
And then they tore you to pieces.
And then and then Keith came in, and Keith shook everyone's hand but mine, because I just shooken Keith's hand outside.
Okay.
And so Greg tore into Keith and said, "You're going to talk to everybody but the new guy." And it was funny. And then Keith said, "No, we just shook hands." And then my set was coming up, so I had to get up. So Greg talked to me for a minute, and then I just got up, and he said, "What, you're just going to leave now? You're just going to leave? This is your spot. You're just going to leave me?" And it made me feel, it was a little thing, but it made me feel very welcome. And he didn't know me except from the show just a little bit. And it was a very nice thing. It made me feel good, and I was glad to at least have that. And that was just maybe a month ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, something like that. So it was very nice.
Do you have a favorite joke of his?
Favorite joke of his? He has a joke about pockets in baby clothing that always... I can't remember exactly how it goes, and I wouldn't do it justice, but I know what a sharp observation that is, and about how the babies... They don't need pockets. What are they hauling around? That's the first one that comes to mind, and there are probably many that I should be able to mention right now, but that's the first one I can think of that I think is just brilliant.
My name is Nick Swartz, and I knew Greg for probably 13 years. Yeah, 13 years. Greg is one of the first guys I met. My first TV appearance, I did Louis Anderson's Comedy Showcase, which was on NBC in the late 90s. And I did my episode with Giraldo in 1998. And he was very nice, really nice. And I moved to New York, and he was my first friend. He was the first guy I met. And I was so, like, really green. And I came up to him at the comedy club, and I was like, hey, it's me, Nick, remember, from the TV thing? And I was such a nerd. But Greg was so nice, and he's like, yeah, man, how are you? And, like really was really sweet. You know, it was really intimidating coming to New York. And Greg always defended me when a lot of people were busting my balls. And one comic even wanted to fight me. And Greg always took up for me. And
Wanted to fight you?
yeah, I'm not going to say who it was.
No.
But, because we're friends. But
I just can't imagine anybody wanting to fight you.
it was stupid and irrational. But Greg always took up for me. And we were friends the whole time. I did his pilot that he did for NBC years ago, and Greg and I have always been friends, and he was always so nice. Even when, like, we did this pilot, it didn't get picked up, and Greg was so bummed out, but he always, like, any opportunity that fell through, he always had his chin up and was always, you know, like, oh, well, man, you know, just keep going, and, like, you know, he never got down and was always had a great attitude. Always. Yeah, I miss him a lot, man. It was really gut-wrenching and awful. Too soon.
Any favorite jokes of his?
There's so many. I mean, honestly, like, looking back on that Larry the Cable Guy roast, I honestly think it's the funniest. And I know people, like, he's so known for the roast now, but it's honestly, like, that segment is one of the most tour de force. I've just amazing joke writing and just hammering. I don't know. It's just like it's so genius. I watch it over and over again, and it's
Like
just
that
like,
moment
oh
when
my
he was
god!
like,
It's just
how the fuck are you?
yeah.
so
It's so
successful?
real. It's just so brilliant because it's so honest, but it's so hard. Every joke hits so hard. It's just like it's one of the biggest comedy just Uzis I've ever seen. Where it's just like, bah, 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 and every joke is fucking brilliant. It's just like, it's just amazing. But his whole album, I mean, Midlife Vices is, I mean, Good Day to Cross the River. I mean, he's brilliant, man. The guy, he didn't write a bad joke. It's impossible to quote a joke from a guy who didn't write a bad one.
William Stevenson. Yeah, I'm very happy to be a part of this Greg Giraldo tribute. He was a very talented man and the kind of comedian that most comedians would watch if they were anywhere around. I usually would always stay when I hosted and he was on the show. Even though I may have seen his routine before, you can always learn something from Greg, because Greg was the kind of comedian who came up with bits that after you watch it, you go, man, I wish I could have thought of that. And if you had thought of it, he put it in a better way. He was always right on top of everything, and he will be missed by all of us. And to everybody who loved him, you still got to do what you do, even though he's gone. But his memory will remain with us forever.
Dave Smith, comedian. What else?
Do you have any stories about Greg or favorite jokes of his?
Oh yeah, well I was telling you outside. The roasts are always what I remember from him. I always thought it was the best. The thing he said to Kathy Griffin, because you've been stitched up a million times and you're still sad to look at. You're like the AIDS quilt. That was a great fucking.
That was a good
That
one.
was a great joke. Man, if I pick out a couple, he said to fucking what's his name. The Gary Busey stuff's hilarious. He goes, Gary Busey's here, kind of. Just flew in from Lobotomy Island. Because your teeth look like a row of urinals. Every time you talk, I want to piss in your mouth. That was great. And the rant he did on Joan Rivers at the end, just about plastic surgery, is just, I mean, I can't really like capture it, but there's the thing. He goes, how bad could your real face have looked? You had that clown mask you've had welded on. I mean, that's just fucking just brilliant. It was just great. Yeah. He really was the best at that, the best roaster. I mean, I don't know. I never really got into like those old the old like Dean roasts or whatever. But of the new class, he's always the guy I like. Like I didn't even watch the last one. I just YouTube Giraldo's. That you're just like, well, let me see what Giraldo did to Hasselhoff, and then that'll be good enough.
Yeah.
And it was great. The Hasselhoff one was great too.
Oh, welcome.
Hey, dudes.
State
Who are
your
you?
slave name.
State my slave name, my given name, Big J Okerson. B-I-G.
Big J Okerson is your given name.
Big J Okerson.
Do you have any stories and or favorite joke of
Some
Greg's?
Giraldo. Favorite joke I've been a fan of. I don't have a particular favorite joke. I'm not sure, but I mean, like, I used to love watching him on the roast, and I think one of the coolest things was that getting to see he was on the show Z-Rock that I was on both seasons, and getting to work with him in that kind of like with improv script was really cool to watch him do that and how funny he was. But we were on the show with Joan Rivers, and then months later he did the Joan Rivers roast, and just watching him like so just blatantly like just trash her face. It's actually a surprised catfish and everything.
He
and
literally
then, like,
means her face too, not like
Yeah.
make fun of her.
yeah, and then we started filming like the next season, and they had to like be together. And I thought it was so awkward and weird. And I even asked him if it was awkward and weird, and he said it kind of was, which I had a feeling it would. It was like you just like literally like they didn't know each other like that.
Right.
You know what I mean? And to really just go at her, and then have to like face her, like for real again, and her daughter. With those two Gabby Jew broads, like how that's gonna be awful coming at you in some shitty set in fucking Midtown Manhattan. Good God! I drove my first time I met him. I was not first time I ever hung out with him. Like we did some gig like Harbor Bay, Long Island. It's like some weird theater out there. And I opened for him, and we had like an awkward. It's one of those things where you're about to take a 3-hour ride with somebody, and you're like, man, really don't know him enough to be that comfortable. I remember the first time I gave Louis C.K., I was going up to the comic strip one time from here, from the cellar, and Attell kind of weirdly offered. He goes, Louis, you're going to the comic strip. I goes, why don't you get a ride with Jay?
Oh, and he's
And he
driving,
took it.
so it's weirder.
And well, I was driving. That's what I'm saying. So it's like,
okay.
he asked me if I would take Louis C.K.
and
basically.
then Dave did not come.
No.
Right.
And then like we drove up there and just like literally we had nothing. Like there was nothing was said. Like I think at one point literally he goes, "Nice night out, huh?" Like I think it was like we were on a shitty first date. And then like about 2 minutes before we got to the comedy comic strip, he started opening up. He goes about like Montreal, what you need to do to get into Montreal. I'm like, well, why don't you just do this down in the village?
Street.
Yeah. I'm like, man, we had nothing for like 30 minutes. And so I felt like the same kind of, I was like, man, we're having this thing with Giraldo. Like, I was like, I don't know him. It's just going to be this arbitrary, like, idle conversation that goes nowhere. But he was a great guy, man. Really is, like, sorely missed, man. I was out in L.A. when it happened, just like it hit. I was out in L.A. performing at the no, I'm kidding. I guess when I was performing, and now I'll be next week at New Brunswick. I'm going to plug my spots. You guys are interested at the comic strip where I drew Louis C.K. 82nd and 2nd, 12:30 show, Friday and Saturday.
So more about you. What jokes are you working on?
You know, all the straw talk reminds me. I'm working on a new bit about
Thank you,
something
sir.
involving balls or whatever. Thank you guys.
Thanks, Jay.
Thanks, dude.